Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this fringe meeting organised by the Bruges Group. Today we do have two outstanding speakers, and I would like to begin by introducing Simon Heffer. Simon Heffer is well known as an outstanding journalist and author. But I feel at the beginning of this meeting more like giving him a vote of thanks than introducing him. Simon has probably been the most effective and consistent voice in favour of conservatism in recent years that has been around the scene. I think he has been more effective in advocating conservatism than any elected Conservative Member of Parliament.
I look around the room and I see so few of you here. Clearly the Conservative Party was right to say that there was no interest in any debate on Europe. The trouble is, we know what happened next. Her party, full to the brim with Heathites, said, well, hang on a minute, we can't possibly do this. We can't possibly have a fight with those European people because it's a bit, to use a much later phrase, nasty. Because, you know, European hegemony is the right way forward. You know, we are nothing. We have no national self-confidence. We have no national identity. We're nothing without Europe. And so, of course, over the next 2 years, they tried, and to my intense regret, they succeeded in having her removed from office, even though, as we all know, she spoke volubly for the British people on this question. And this proved a point that the Heathites had never gone away, that the series of lies told by Heath between 1970 and 1973, when we finally went into Europe, were still current, and that the Conservative Party was determined to adhere to the Heathite dishonesty about Europe. Now, Mrs. Thatcher was removed, replaced by an infinitely lesser man, and I would argue has for the most part been replaced by a succession of lesser men ever since. And I just feel that the Conservative Party has it in its DNA to be Chamberlainite about Europe. By that, I mean that the instinct of whoever is leading the Conservative Party at the time, whatever his rhetoric might be from time to time, is to say, we have to go along with what our partners in Europe want. And I must say, having looked in the last 24 hours at what passes for a debate at the highest levels of the party between the Shadow Foreign Secretary, Mr. Hague, and the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Cameron, they don't seem to be able to make their mind up on Europe. We've seen already demonstrated by the Cameron administration of the Tory party that they have no desire to confront big issues in Europe. Will there be a referendum on the Treaty of Lisbon if it's not ratified? I wouldn't put money on it. Will there be a referendum on the Treaty of Lisbon if it has been ratified? Certainly not. And this becomes a question, as all questions to do with Europe are, of our own belief in democracy, our own belief that we live in a nation whose constitutional freedoms are there to be guaranteed and protected by those whom we elect to power. Now, I am in no doubt that the Treaty of Lisbon is a piece of evil. I am in no doubt that the Treaty of Lisbon should not be ratified by this country, should not be passed into a law affecting this country. My view, and call me old-fashioned if you want, that the Conservative Party, which used to be the party of the constitution of this country, which was the party that believed in upholding the constitutional freedoms of this country, is the party, whether in opposition or in government, that should be yelling from the rooftops that we not only will not accept the Treaty of Lisbon, but that if by some mischance it is put into law before a Conservative government comes back to power, that Conservative Parliament will repeal it and take it out of law. We are now living in a climate where Europe has been taken off the agenda. To use a very popular contemporary adjective, it's become a toxic subject again for the Conservative Party. I don't give a stuff how toxic they think it is. This is something that affects our very freedoms as a nation. It's a thing that affects our right to govern ourselves. And I'm sorry, in my view, there is nothing more important than our right to govern ourselves. When you are visited by a Conservative canvasser in that election, do ask where your Member of Parliament your prospective Member of Parliament stands on the question of the Treaty of Lisbon. And unless you are given an absolutely categorical undertaking that he wishes the treaty to be repealed or wishes a referendum to be held on it, one or the other, depending on what state we're at, feel free not to vote for him. I know it's a hard thing to say, but these are life and death issues. This is the life and death of the sovereignty of our country, and there's nothing, I'm afraid, more important than that, as far as I'm concerned. Do not doubt that we can get our sovereignty back from Europe. Do not doubt it will be a hell of a fight to do so. But equally do not doubt that it's time that the Conservative Party started standing up for Britain and standing up for our sovereignty. Thank you very much.
Now I'd like to introduce the man that I think the people that run the Conservative Party would have preferred wasn't here today. If Mr Farage hadn't been here, we would have had our two friends, the two Conservative MEPs here. But instead, we've got Mr Farage. All of you, I think, know him well. He's a high-profile politician. He likes to take a high profile. But I think all of you will also agree that he also speaks in the interests of democracy, and he also speaks in the interests of the British interest.
The title of this meeting, Mr Chairman, will a Conservative government deliver on Europe? I think the answer is very easy. Under David Cameron, no. They haven't left the EPP. They're as firmly ensconced as they were before David Cameron became the leader. Oh, but there's some promise that after the European elections of 2009, then they're going to leave the EPP and set up their own group. Well, I'll have a £10 bet with any man or woman in this room that it simply won't happen. He'll rat again.
I'll take that bet, Mr Farage.
That £10 is done. That £10 is done. All I can say about Cameron's position apropos a referendum is that he has been consistently equivocal. Nobody actually knows what he's saying. Although he did say, on the Andrew Marr programme yesterday, he said the Lisbon Treaty is alive and well. Well, as long as you're around, old son, it certainly is, isn't it? If he was genuine, if he really was a Eurosceptic, Euro-realist, if he really believed that we should be governing our own country and not having much more than a trade relationship with our European neighbours, he has the power. Given his lead in the polls, he has the power to kill the Lisbon Treaty stone dead this very afternoon. Mr Cameron could kill this treaty stone dead. He just refuses to do so. And he goes on, day after day, concealing the truth. I watched him on Marr yesterday. I watched George Osborne this morning on BBC Breakfast, talking about the credit crunch, talking about financial regulation. I mean, pretending that if they're in government, they will actually have a say over the city, how the city is regulated. They won't. We've given that away. Frankly, it seems to me that the choice at the next election is between New Labour and Blue Labour. Frankly, you cannot put a cigarette paper between these party leaders on issues of real substance. Well, you can say rubbish, but look at it. 75% of our laws are made somewhere else, and with this Lisbon Treaty, that percentage can only increase. Now, I think this issue is important, but David Cameron doesn't seem to think it is. In fact, he says we mustn't bang on about Europe. That's what he says, isn't it? Well, as far as I'm concerned, we are talking about the birthright of our children and grandchildren, for them to grow up and live in a country that they can call their own, for them to be able to be a self-governing people, and as far as I'm concerned, we must bang on about Europe as much as we possibly can.